The first thing I noticed when I pulled into Cactus Valley was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the sort you find by a quiet lake or deep in the woods. No, this was different. This silence had weight. Like the desert itself was holding its breath, watching me from behind the saguaro cacti and sun-baked rocks. My name's Lucio. I wasn't planning on staying long. I'd taken the job on a whim, really. A simple mailman gig posted online with free lodging and steady hours. After what happened back in El Paso, what I was running from, I figured a quiet, dead-end job in the middle of nowhere might help clear my head. Give me a fresh start. But Cactus Valley wasn't just quiet. It felt wrong. The town looked like it had been plucked out of an old postcard. Dusty Main Street, a diner that still served milkshakes in metal cups, and a population that could probably all fit in a school gym. But something about it didn't sit right. The buildings looked too still. The people moved like they were carrying invisible weights. No kids. No dogs barking. Just the wind blowing sand across the pavement like time was trying to erase this place. The post office was on the edge of town, flat-roofed, yellow stucco walls with faded letters above the door that barely read, United States Post Office, Cactus Valley, A's. Inside it smelled like old paper, dry wood and something else I couldn't name. The air felt thicker in there. Warmer too, like the building held on to heat and memories. The front counter was empty, but someone had left the little service bell sitting out. I rang it once. A moment later, the door behind the counter creaked open. A man stepped out slowly, tall, lean, skin like cracked leather from too many years in the sun. His eyes were grey, but not cloudy. Sharp. Too sharp. He wore a faded blue uniform, neatly buttoned, with a name tag that read La Porta. "You're the new route runner," he said. Not a question. A statement. I nodded. "Lucio Vega. From the listing online." He stared at me for a few seconds too long, then walked around the counter without another word. His boots made no sound on the tiled floor. He handed me a keyring, a small canvas mailbag, and a folded sheet of paper that looked like it had been through a fire and taped back together. "The rules," he said, his voice dry as sand. "Read them. Follow them. That's all I'll say." I opened the sheet and scanned the list. 1. Do not deliver after sunset. 2. Never knock. Leave the mail and walk away. 3. Avoid mailbox 9. 4. If a red envelope appears, return it to the vault. 5. If you hear whispering from a letter, ignore it. 6. Never take mail home. 7. If something follows you, don't run. Just keep walking. I looked up. Is this some kind of joke? Laporta didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. "You start tomorrow," he said. "First delivery leaves at 6. Route map's in your bag. Don't be late." Before I could ask anything else, he turned and disappeared into the back room, the door swinging shut behind him like a final word. I stood there for a while, holding the rules, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. Maybe it was just some weird local tradition. Small towns had quirks, superstitions, right? But something told me this wasn't about tradition. It was about survival. And I had just been handed a list that might be the only thing keeping me alive. The first thing I noticed about the Cactus Valley post office was the smell. Not the usual musty scent of old paper or ink-stained desks. This was different. It smelled dry, like sun-baked bones, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes and your skin and makes you feel like something is always watching from the corners. It was my first official day on the job, and Laporta, the postmaster, was already in the break room when I arrived. He didn't say hello. He didn't even nod. He just sat at the small table with a chipped coffee mug, staring at the wall. I didn't know then what he was looking at, but when I followed his gaze, I saw it. A sheet of yellowed paper, pinned to the bulletin board with a rusty thumbtack. The edges were curled and brittle, and the words were written in black ink, each rule carefully numbered and underlined. Rules for Route 12 follow without question. 1. Do not deliver after sunset. 2. Never look into mailbox 9. 3. Return all red envelopes to the vault immediately. 4. If a letter whispers, do not respond. 5. Do not speak to the man in the green hat. He doesn't live here. 6. If you see someone with your face, take a different route. 7. Do not touch mail addressed in chalk. 8. If a dog follows you, let it. Do not pet it. 9. The desert does not end where the map says it does. Number 10. Always finish your route before 4:44 p.m. At first, I laughed. I thought it was some weird small-town hazing thing. You know, like the time I worked at that auto shop and the guys made me go looking for blinker fluid. I turned to Laporta and raised an eyebrow. This real? He blinked slowly, like waking from a trance. More real than you'll ever want it to be. Then he stood and walked out of the room. I stood there alone, rereading the list. Rule number 2 stuck with me. Never look into mailbox 9. The wording felt deliberate. It didn't say don't open or don't deliver. It said don't look into it. Like it was a trap, like your eyes were the key to something that shouldn't be unlocked. I shook off the chill crawling up my spine and went to check my mailbag. The rotes were printed out neatly on a faded clipboard. My name, Lucio Vega, was scribbled in block letters on top of Route 12. Each stop was numbered, each address typed with mechanical precision. I loaded the bag, slung it over my shoulder and stepped out into the burning Arizona sun. Cactus Valley wasn't a big place. Just dust, scattered trailers and roads that looked like they hadn't been paved in decades. No traffic lights, no sidewalks, the kind of town where even the tumbleweeds rolled slow, like they were tired too. My first few deliveries went by without anything strange. A letter here, a package there. An old woman waved from her rocking chair and offered me lemonade. I smiled and kept going, but around stop nub 8 I came across it. The mailbox. There was no number on it, just a dull, rusted metal box leaning forward on a crooked wooden post. My map didn't mention anything strange about the location, but something about it made me stop walking. I glanced at the route sheet again. The address matched, but there was no number painted on the box, no name, no house in sight either, just dry brush and open desert. I remembered rule number 2. Don't look into mailbox 9. Was this it? I hesitated. Maybe I could just slip the letter in without looking. Keep my head down, quick motion, no big deal. But when I reached for the flap, something odd happened. It creaked open by itself, just a little, just enough to show the dark gap inside. I froze. A rush of warm, stale air wafted out. It smelled like copper, like something had bled inside and never dried. I didn't want to look. I tried not to, but my eyes betrayed me. For the briefest second, I glanced in. I saw movement, slow, slithering. Not a thing exactly, more like the idea of a thing. A blur that made my brain twist and tighten. My heart skipped a beat, my vision flickered. Then the mailbox slammed shut. I dropped the letter and backed away, stumbling, nearly falling into a thorn bush. I didn't breathe until I was 50 feet down the road, the sound of that rusted creak still ringing in my ears. Back at the post office, I didn't mention it. Not to Laporta, not to anyone. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Something kept scratching at my trailer walls. And outside, in the distance, I swore I saw the faint outline of a crooked metal box, half buried in the sand, waiting, watching. I hadn't even delivered the red envelope yet. I should have known better than to ignore the rules. It was a Thursday. Dry air, wind blowing grit into my eyes, the kind of Arizona heat that sits heavy on your shoulders. I'd only been on the job a week, and already I'd memorized most of the delivery route. Each mailbox had its own strange presence. Some were rusted and forgotten, others oddly polished, like someone cared too much. But mailbox 9, it looked like any other. A faded green paint job, a dent in the side. It sat alone at the end of a narrow dirt road, half swallowed by desert weeds. But it wasn't on the route sheet. I remember squinting at the page in my hand, then back at the mailbox. The number was clear, 9. I had a letter addressed to 9 Sand Hollow Drive. I assumed it was just a mistake in the paperwork. The rules said not to deliver to mailbox 9, but come on, what was the worst that could happen? The place looked abandoned. I slid the envelope in. The mailbox gave a tiny creak as I closed it. That's all. No lightning in the sky. No sudden gust of wind. I shrugged and walked back to the truck. That night, everything changed. It started small, a tapping sound on the wall of my trailer. I figured it was a tree branch, or maybe some animal. But then it moved around the walls, slow and deliberate, like something pacing just outside. I turned off the lights and pressed my ear to the wall. There was whispering, not words. Just the sound of breath trying to form them. Faint, like someone speaking through fabric. I told myself it was the wind. I told myself lots of things. Then the shadows started acting strange. You know how shadows are supposed to follow light? These didn't. They moved even when nothing else did. I'd be standing still in my kitchen and I'd see a shadow dart across the floor, like something had just run behind me. By midnight, I was curled up on my couch with every light on. That's when I noticed the envelope. It was on the coffee table, right where I tossed my keys. The same letter I had delivered to mailbox 9. I picked it up slowly. It was sealed, untouched. My heart pounded as I turned it over. No name, no return address, just a deep red wax seal. I didn't open it. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me still wanted to believe I was imagining things. Maybe I was too afraid of what I might find inside. I wrapped the envelope in an old towel, stuffed it in a kitchen drawer, and tried to sleep. Tried. Sleep didn't come. Not really. I'd close my eyes and find myself back at that mailbox, only this time it was open wide, too wide, like a gaping mouth. Inside there wasn't mail. There were eyes, pale, watching. When I finally got up in the morning, the envelope was gone. I never opened that drawer. I left the trailer and drove to work early, heart racing, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Laporta was waiting for me when I walked in. "You delivered to mailbox 9, he said. It wasn't a question. I thought it was a mistake on the list, I stammered. I had the address. I didn't think... You didn't think, he said, cutting me off. Don't do it again. I waited for more. For an explanation. But Laporta turned and walked into his office, door clicking shut behind him. That was it. No one else at the post office looked at me that day. It was like I'd become invisible. Or maybe I was already starting to fade. But I knew this much. Whatever I had awakened with that single mistake, it wasn't finished with me yet. The day began like any other in Cactus Valley. Dry wind, a copper-coloured sky, silence so deep it felt like the air itself was waiting for something. I went about my deliveries, keeping my eyes off mailbox 9, even though I could feel it watching me. It had been days since I accidentally dropped a letter into it, and I still hadn't recovered from the feeling that followed, that scratching on my walls, that whisper in the dark. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found that morning. I stepped into the post office at 7 a.m, sharp. The floor creaked under my boots, and the overhead lights buzzed like insects. I walked past the front counter, down the narrow hallway, and into the sorting room where we prepped the day's mail. The same cracked linoleum, the same coffee-stained bulletin board with the rules no one wanted to talk about. But something was different. The room was quiet, too quiet. Then I saw it. Sitting on my desk dead center was a red envelope, bread like fresh blood. It wasn't part of a bundle or mixed in with other letters. It just sat there, alone, heavy, like it had been placed there on purpose. At first I thought maybe it was for someone else, maybe a misdelivery. I stepped closer and saw my name written in neat black ink across the front. Lucio. I blinked. My heart slowed down, and then sped up again like it had skipped a beat. I didn't touch it, just stared. The envelope wasn't dusty, wasn't wrinkled. It looked fresh, brand new. That was when Laporta entered the room. He froze in the doorway. His eyes landed on the envelope. And for the first time since I met him, he looked afraid. "Where did that come from?" he asked, voice sharp and flat. "I don't know," I said. "It was here when I came in." He walked over slowly, like the envelope might bite. Then he picked it up, holding it between two fingers like it was poison. "You didn't open it, did you?" he asked. "No, I haven't touched it." His shoulders relaxed just a bit. "Good. You need to take this to the vault, now." "The vault?" I asked. "What's in it?" "Not your concern," he said. "Just follow the rules." He handed the envelope to me. It was heavier than I expected. Not thick, just heavy in a way that didn't make sense, like something inside it was pressing against time itself. I took it without a word. My fingers tingled where they touched the red paper. Laporta led me through the back hallway, down a staircase I hadn't noticed before. The air grew colder with each step. At the bottom, he unlocked a heavy steel door and flicked on a single bulb. It swung slightly from the ceiling, casting shadows across rows of locked drawers and file cabinets. "Over there," he said, pointing to a glass box in the corner. Inside was a stack of other red envelopes, some cracked and faded, some trembling slightly. I opened the box and placed mine on top of the stack. As soon as I shut the lid, I heard a soft whisper, faint, almost not there. It sounded like my name being spoken from far away and underwater. "Lucio," I turned to Laporta. He hadn't moved. "What are these?" I asked. "Who's sending them?" He stared at the box. We don't ask questions, we return them. That's how it's always been. That doesn't answer anything. It doesn't have to. I didn't argue. I didn't want to. There was something in that room, something breathing behind the cabinets, behind the walls. I could feel it. The same feeling you get when you realize something is standing behind you, but you're too scared to turn around. As we walked back up the stairs, Laporta stopped at the doorway and looked at me. This job is about respect, Lucio, not for the people, for the system, for the rules. He left without waiting for a reply. I stood there for a few seconds, listening to the silence. Then I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, and even though I had placed the red envelope in the vault, I could still feel it, like it was still in my pocket, waiting. I didn't plan on digging into the past. At first, I thought I could just follow the rules, ignore the strange stuff, and make it through. But something about that red envelope wouldn't leave my mind. Even after I returned it to the vault, I kept seeing it in my dreams, sitting on my chest, whispering in a voice that sounded like rusted hinges creaking open. So I started asking questions. It began with the employee records. I figured if I was going crazy, maybe someone else had too. The filing cabinet in the back office was old and dented, like it had been kicked more than once. Dust clouded up as I pulled open the drawers. Most of the files were thin. A name, a start date, and nothing else. No end date, no resignation letters, just faded photos of tired faces in grey uniforms. I read the names out loud. Tomas Rivera, Marcy Dillon, Ezra Blaine. I hadn't seen a single one of them around town. When I asked Laporta, he just said, they moved on. Then he looked at the clock and changed the subject. The next day on my route, I stopped by the town diner. Only 2 people ever sat inside, and one of them was always Clara. Everyone just called her that. Clara. No last name. She had a voice like gravel and a stare that made you feel like she already knew your secrets. You're the new mailman, she said without turning her head. I nodded and slid into the booth across from her. Yeah, name's Lucio. I know. How long have you lived here? I asked. Too long. She sipped her black coffee, then leaned forward. Let me guess, you're seeing things. Mail that moves, whispers, maybe a box that's never on your route, but shows up anyway. My skin went cold. How do you know? She glanced toward the window. The desert outside looked like it always did, still, quiet, endless. Because they all come to me eventually, the new ones, the curious ones. I didn't speak, I just listened. She continued, this town, it's not right. Hasn't been for years. The post office is the centre. Everything strange begins and ends there. And that vault downstairs, it's older than the building itself. But why the mail? I asked. Why letters? Clara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Long time ago, people believed that messages had power, that words carried more than meaning. They carried memory, emotion, energy. The mail, handwritten, heartfelt, sealed with care, was like a little piece of the soul sent out into the world. Over time, the mail here started collecting those pieces, and something started feeding off them. I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or run. She tapped the table with her crooked finger. Those rules you were given? They're not instructions, they're boundaries. Do this and you're safe. Break them and you're exposed. I thought about Mailbox 9, the whisper I heard, the shadow crawling across my ceiling. What happens if you break them more than once? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a yellowed newspaper. The headline read, Local postman missing, no leads in mysterious disappearance. The date was from 12 years ago. Below it was a photo of a man with tired eyes. Tomas Rivera. He asked too many questions, Clara whispered. Then he vanished. They said he quit, but I know better. My hands were cold as I folded the paper and handed it back. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She looked at me with something between pity and warning. Because you already opened the door. You're not asking how to leave. You're asking how deep it goes. That means it's already too late. I left the diner with a knot in my stomach and sweat on my neck, even though the sky was overcast and the air was cool. As I stepped back into my mail truck, I looked at the stack of envelopes. Right on top was another red one, no name, no address, just waiting. And the strange thing was, I didn't remember picking it up. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the silence, the kind that wraps around you in Cactus Valley like a wet cloth, tight and hard to breathe through. Or maybe it was the way the red envelope kept showing up. The first time, it was on my desk at the post office. No name, no stamp, just a deep crimson envelope sitting neatly between my morning mail. Laporta's eyes locked on it the second he entered. He didn't yell, he didn't panic. He just walked over, picked it up with trembling fingers and said, "You didn't touch it, did you?" I shook my head. "Good," he whispered, almost to himself. Then he disappeared into the back room, into the vault. But the envelope came back the next day. Same spot. This time, Laporta didn't say a word. He just looked at me like he already knew the answer to a question I hadn't asked yet. By the third day, it was waiting for me before I even unlocked the door. It knew me. That morning, I stood there in the sorting room, holding the red envelope in my hand. It was heavier than it looked. The paper had a strange warmth to it, like it had been resting on someone's chest. I turned it over. No wax seal, no handwriting, just smooth, perfect crimson. I knew I shouldn't open it. There were rules, and I'd already broken one. Mailbox 9. I still have nightmares about that whisper, about the long fingers curling around the edge of my bed. But curiosity is a strange kind of hunger. It doesn't let go. It grows the more you try to ignore it. So I opened it, just a tear down the side, slow and careful, and inside only one sentence printed on a pale slip of paper: "You are now part of the rote." I read it once, twice. It didn't make sense. But then something changed. At first it was subtle, the way the lights flickered for a half-second longer than usual, the way the room felt colder though the sun was blazing outside. Then I started seeing things, not out of the corner of my eye, no. These were full glimpses. A figure walking past the mail truck mirror, a man-shaped shadow inside the post office after hours. Once I saw Laporta outside my trailer at night, just standing. Not knocking, not moving, just standing there until sunrise. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of roads, endless desert highways that curved in impossible ways. Some went straight up into the sky, others dipped into black holes that swallowed everything. And I was always driving, alone, chased by something I couldn't see but could always hear. Footsteps, breathing, sometimes laughter. One morning I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize my own eyes. They were tired, too tired, and behind them, something else. Like a passenger had taken a seat just behind my thoughts. That's when I started to feel the rote inside me. I would wake up already knowing which letters to deliver, even before sorting them. My feet would take me down shortcuts that didn't exist on any map. I passed houses that weren't there the day before, with people I'd never seen who acted like they'd known me for years. One woman, her skin pale and thin like wax paper, held my hand as I passed her a letter and whispered, "I'm sorry they chose you." I didn't ask her what she meant. I didn't want to know. By now I understood the red envelope had done something to me, marked me, changed my place in this town, in this job. I wasn't just delivering mail anymore. I was part of something bigger, something older, and whatever it wasn't finished with me. Not yet. I wasn't supposed to be there. I knew it deep down, knew that the rules, those strange, cryptic rules, were there for a reason. But the truth is, once you start doubting something, once you begin questioning its purpose, there's no going back. It gnaws at you. It pulls you in. And the thing is, I'd already gone too far. I had opened the red envelope, hadn't I? I'd crossed the line. So when I decided to go back to the post office after hours, it wasn't entirely a conscious choice. It was a need, a hunger to know, to see if the things I had been feeling in my bones were true. That there was something darker under the surface of this place. The post office was silent when I entered. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting a pale yellow glow on the walls. Everything was as it always had been. Dust settling in the corners, the wooden floors creaking underfoot, the faint smell of old paper and ink in the air. But tonight, everything felt different. There was a tension in the room that I couldn't explain, like the air had thickened and was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I walked through the sorting room, my shoes scraping against the floor, the sound too loud in the stillness. The desk where I'd first seen the red envelope was empty now, its drawers closed tight, nothing out of place. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled, and I stopped, feeling the weight of the silence around me. I turned slowly, half expecting to see Laporta standing in the shadows, watching me. But no one was there. I moved past the desk and then, as if some unseen force had guided my feet, I walked toward the far corner of the room. There was a section of the floor that had always seemed off. It wasn't cracked or damaged, but something about it just didn't sit right. I had noticed it before when I was sorting through deliveries, but I had always pushed the thought aside. It was nothing, just a trick of the light. Or so I told myself. Tonight, though, the floor looked different. It was almost as if it had shifted slightly, the edges uneven, the wood warped in a way that made my stomach churn. My heart thudded in my chest, louder than ever. I crouched down, my breath coming fast and shallow. I ran my fingers over the edges of the floorboards, feeling for a seam or crack. And then I found it. A small metal latch, almost hidden in the grain of the wood. My pulse quickened as I tugged it. It didn't budge. I pulled harder, gritting my teeth, and finally, with a soft click, the floor gave way. I pushed the wooden panel aside, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into darkness. I stood frozen, staring into the void. It smelled like earth and old paper down there, the scent of decay almost overpowering. I knew I should turn around, go back, call it a night. But something, call it instinct, call it curiosity, call it whatever you want, told me that I had to go down there. There was no turning back. Not now. I grabbed the edge of the stairs and stepped down. The air grew colder as I descended, and the darkness swallowed me whole. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the tight space, amplified by the hollow silence. The stairs creaked under my weight, and the faintest whisper of something moving seemed to follow me. When I reached the bottom, I stood still for a moment, trying to adjust my eyes to the dim light that filtered down from the main floor above. The room I was in was vast, much larger than I had expected. It was a concrete chamber with high ceilings and walls lined with shelves full of mail. But this wasn't ordinary mail. These were old, yellowed letters, their edges frayed, their ink faded with time. Some were wrapped in crimson wax, sealed shut. Others were open, but the pages were blank, as though the words had been erased, leaving nothing but emptiness. I could feel it then, the weight of the room, the heaviness in the air. It wasn't just the smell of dust or age that made my skin crawl. It was the sense that the place was alive in a way that was far beyond anything I could understand. It was as if the mail itself was breathing, exhaling, waiting for something to happen. And then I saw it. At the far end of the room, a vault stood, its door cracked open just enough to let a sliver of light spill through. I didn't need to be told what was inside. I knew. The red envelopes, the ones Laporta had warned me about, were in there, thousands of them, each one holding a piece of someone's soul, someone's memory, someone's lost moment. I stepped forward, unable to stop myself, drawn by the pull of the red envelopes. But just as my hand reached out, a voice stopped me. "It's too late for you now." I spun around. Laporta was standing in the doorway, his face shadowed, his expression unreadable. He was so still that for a moment I thought he might be a statue, a figment of my imagination. But then his voice came again, low and cold. "You've crossed the line, Lucio. You've opened the envelope. You've seen the route. You're part of it now." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What is this place? What are these letters? Laporta's gaze never left me. The post office is a keeper of memories, a keeper of lost things. The envelopes you see, they're not just letters. They're the souls of those who broke the rules. They are bound to this place. You will be too. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, to bolt out of that room, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, as if the very air had thickened, holding me captive. "You have two choices now," Laporta continued. "You can accept your role as route keeper and protect the town, or you can destroy the vault, break the seals, and release everything." I felt my hands tremble. The weight of the decision hit me like a truck, but deep down I already knew. I already knew what I had to do. "I'll burn it," I whispered. Laporta's eyes darkened. "Then you'll never leave this place." And just like that, I knew that the line I had crossed wasn't just in the mailroom. It was in me, now. And there was no going back. I had to know the truth. I couldn't let it go any longer. Laporta stood across the room, his figure like a shadow carved from stone. His eyes never blinked, never moved. They just stared, cold and calculating, as if they were watching me through the years, through my every choice. I felt his gaze digging into me, and my heart pounded in my chest. The vault beneath the floor, I said, my voice rough from the tension. What is it? What is all of this? He didn't speak for a long time, his silence filling the room like a thick fog. The walls seemed to hum with anticipation, and I could almost feel something stirring in the darkness, something ancient, restless. You've already started to unravel the pieces, he finally muttered, his voice as dry as the Arizona air outside. But you don't understand, Lucio. You think this is just a job, a simple post office in a dead town. But it's more, much more. I took a step forward, my fingers gripping the edge of the desk. The red envelope I had tried to return earlier sat on the edge, mocking me. I could hear it, faintly, as if it whispered my name. But I ignored it, for now. What do you mean more? I asked. Why the rules? Why do you keep me here? Keep all of us here? Laporta's lips barely twitched, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. You're not the first to ask. You're not even the first to break the rules. I blinked, confused. What? He moved, the sound of his steps echoing in the silence. The post office was built atop something, ancient, a place where the boundaries between this world and the next were thin, and this place, this town, was chosen to hold it, to keep it contained. The letters aren't just letters, Lucio. They're the messages of those who came before us. I frowned. My head swirled. What was he talking about? The letters were nothing but mundane requests, bills, odd postcards from forgotten places. That's what I had thought. Messages? I repeated, my voice shaking with frustration. What kind of messages? Laporta turned away for a moment, his eyes scanning the shadows as if he could hear something I couldn't. Messages of those who broke the rules, those who stepped too far into the unknown. The post office is the seal that holds them here. The mail, the envelopes, they are their prison. I felt a cold chill spread through my body, like fingers of ice crawling up my spine. It didn't make sense, but something in the pit of my stomach told me it did. I had seen it, after all. The shifting shadows, the way the letters seemed to move when I wasn't looking. I'd felt it too, something watching me, waiting for me to slip up. You want me to join you, don't you? I whispered, the thought turning my stomach. Laporta's gaze darkened, the lines of his face sharpening like a knife. I don't want you, Lucio, but you have no choice. You've already broken the seal. By delivering the red envelope, by opening it, you've bound yourself to the route. You are now part of it. I took a step back, my pulse racing. It was too much. It couldn't be real. No, I muttered. No, I won't be part of this. I won't become you. Laporta's lips curled into something almost like a smile, but it was empty, hollow. You don't have a choice. The route calls to you now. It always calls. You'll feel its pull, just like all the others before you. You'll see the faces of those who've gone before, those who stayed too long, who didn't follow the rules. He stepped toward me, slowly, like a predator circling its prey. I could feel the weight of his presence pressing down on me, thickening the air. I wanted to run, but my feet felt like lead. The route keeper's curse is not just a job, he continued, his voice low and dangerous. It's a prison. You live with it, and you die with it. The post office doesn't let go, and if you try to leave, if you try to destroy it, there's no escape. The town, the route, it'll consume you. It's always hungry. I felt the blood drain from my face. What had I gotten myself into? This was beyond any post office, beyond any job. It was something far older, something far darker than I could have ever imagined. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. So what happens now? What do you expect me to do? Laporta's smile widened, though there was no warmth in it. You'll take the mantle. You'll become the keeper of the route. The only other choice is to destroy everything, the town, the post office, and everyone in it. I stared at him, my mind racing. I didn't want this. I couldn't take this on. But deep down, I knew. I had already made my choice. I had stepped too far. I had broken the rules. There was no going back. I looked at the red envelope one last time. It was almost like it was calling to me, its wax seal now burning a hole in my chest. Then I'll destroy it, I said, my voice shaking but resolute. I'll destroy it all. Laporta's expression didn't change. He simply nodded slowly as if he had been waiting for this moment. Very well. But know this, Lucio. Once the seal is broken, there's no putting it back. There's no returning to the way things were. I felt the weight of his words settle in my chest, but I couldn't back down. The curse of the route had already marked me, and now I was going to burn it all down. But as I turned to walk toward the post office's vault, something deep inside me whispered a warning. Something that said I wasn't going to be the one to end this. And I was starting to wonder if I was walking straight into the heart of the nightmare I had tried so hard to escape. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the madness of it all, the crushing weight of the rules that were suffocating me, or the way the red envelope seemed to burn a hole in my mind the moment I opened it. But standing there, in the dim light of the post office after hours, with gasoline in one hand and a match in the other, I felt strangely calm. The smell of the gasoline was thick, overpowering, and it made my head spin. But the feeling didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter that my hands were shaking. It didn't matter that every nerve in my body screamed for me to run. I had made a decision. I had to end this. Whatever this was. I poured the gasoline onto the floor in a wide arc, the liquid soaking into the old wood, the scent of fuel mixing with the musty air. It splashed over the red envelopes stacked in the corner of the vault. Their eerie glow seemed to pulse like they were alive. It was as if they were waiting for me to make the move that would set everything in motion. I could hear the quiet hum of the building, almost like a breath that had been held for far too long, and now, finally, it was ready to exhale. I took a deep breath, holding the match between my fingers. My mind raced. Could I really do this? Could I really destroy the very thing that kept the town in check, that kept whatever thing lay in the dark from being unleashed? My stomach twisted at the thought, but my hands moved anyway. I struck the match, the flame flickering for a split second before it caught and flared brightly. The match was like a signal. The second I dropped it, the fire caught the gasoline, shooting up in a sudden burst. The red envelopes crackled, their edges catching light. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down. The fire spread, licking at the old wood of the vault. The letters caught fire in a way that felt unnatural, like they were more than paper. They burned, but the flames didn't consume them. They twisted, dancing in impossible patterns, like they were alive, like they were trying to pull me into them. I stepped back, the heat from the fire singeing my skin. My breath came faster now, my chest tight with panic. I couldn't stop it. The letters had been sealed for too long. The fire was just the beginning. The vault groaned, a deep sound like metal stretching, like the building was waking up. And then something else, something darker. A voice, barely a whisper at first, but then louder, as if it was coming from everywhere at once. No. It stretched out, a single drawn-out word, filled with hunger. I turned toward the sound, my heart hammering. There, standing in the doorway of the vault, was Laporta. But this wasn't the same man I'd seen before. His skin was grey, his eyes hollow, like someone had drained the life from him. He didn't look human anymore, more like a shadow of something that once was. "You shouldn't have done this," he said, his voice a rasp, like it was coming from deep underwater. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The fire was roaring now, and the vault had collapsed in on itself, bricks and stone cracking under the pressure of something inside it. Something angry. Something that had been waiting. I took a step back, feeling the heat on my face, feeling the weight of the town's history pressing in on me, pressing down on my shoulders. I didn't know how much time I had. All I knew was that I needed to move, needed to run. But Laporta didn't move. He stayed rooted in place, watching as the fire consumed everything, his blank eyes unblinking. "You think this will end it?" he asked. "The rules were never meant to be broken. Not for you, not for anyone." I took another step back, and then another. My feet were rooted to the ground, like I was stuck in mud, but I couldn't stop. I had to get out. I couldn't let it end like this. But the fire was spreading too fast now. The walls groaned, buckled. The building shook like it was breathing its last breath. I turned and ran, pushing through the door into the street. The night air hit me like a cold slap. I didn't stop. I ran, my lungs burning, my mind spinning with the sound of the building collapsing behind me. The fire was still burning, and the noise of the flames was deafening, filling the silence of the desert night. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I woke with a start, the sound of my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. My eyelids fluttered open, and for a moment I wasn't sure where I was. The dry Arizona heat hit me like a wall, the sun already burning through the thin fabric of my shirt. I blinked, trying to focus. The inside of my mail truck was the same, dusty, worn and quiet as it always had been, but something was wrong. I rubbed my eyes, expecting to see the familiar, sun-drenched streets of Cactus Valley. Instead, the town was completely silent. The roads stretched ahead of me, empty, with no sign of life, no people walking around, no children playing in front yards. I twisted the rearview mirror. The post office wasn't there anymore. Nothing but cracked pavement and an empty lot where it used to stand. I sat up straighter, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I felt lighter, almost free. But then a strange weight settled in my chest. It was too quiet, too still. My stomach churned. My first instinct was to drive away, to leave the town and never look back. The fire in the post office had burned it all down, hadn't it? The vault, the envelopes, the rules. It had to be over. But then I saw him. A small child, no older than 6 or 7, stood at the edge of the lot. He wasn't looking at me, just staring down at the ground, holding something in his hands. I couldn't see what it was at first, but the way he clutched it so tightly made me uneasy. I pulled the truck to a stop. My hands felt cold as I turned off the engine. The child didn't move, still standing like a statue. I got out slowly, my feet dragging on the dusty ground as I approached him. The air felt thicker now, almost like the heat was pressing in on me, trying to suffocate me. I could feel something watching me, just on the edge of my vision, something that didn't belong. I stopped a few feet from the boy, not sure what to say. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and empty, like he'd seen something far beyond his years. There was no expression on his face, just silence, as if he was waiting for me to speak. "Hey there!" My voice felt foreign to me, dry. "What are you holding?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward and extended his hand, revealing what he was clutching. It was an envelope, red, with a dark wax seal in the shape of a crest that I recognized all too well. My name was written on it, the ink still fresh, as if it had just been stamped. I stared at it, my heart sinking. I didn't want to touch it. I couldn't. "Who gave this to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The boy didn't speak, but he pushed the envelope toward me, his eyes still locked on mine. There was no doubt in my mind now. It was the same as the ones I had burned, the ones I had tried to destroy, the ones that would never die. I took the envelope from his hands, my fingers trembling as I held it. The weight of it felt wrong, unnatural. As soon as I touched it, I felt a coldness spread through my skin, creeping up my arm and down into my chest. The air around me thickened, and I could hear the faintest sound, a whisper, just out of reach, like a forgotten voice calling from somewhere deep in the desert. I turned the envelope over in my hands. The wax seal was intact, but the edges were starting to blacken, like it was slowly burning away. I could feel the weight of it pulling me, dragging me back into the cycle, back into whatever nightmare had started the moment I accepted that job. The boy stepped back, his face expressionless, his body vanishing into the shadow of a nearby building. I blinked, and when I looked again, he was gone. I stood there, holding the red envelope, feeling the heat of the desert sun against my skin, but it wasn't enough. Nothing would be enough. I'd broken the rules, and now they were breaking me. As I stared at the envelope, the world around me seemed to shift. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, like the pavement was cracking, ready to swallow me whole. A distant sound reached my ears, faint but unmistakable, the clinking of a mailbox door swinging open. I looked up. There in the distance, a mailbox stood in the middle of the empty lot. It wasn't any mailbox I recognized. The metal was old and rusted, the number 9 barely visible, but it stood there like it had always been there, waiting for me. I knew I couldn't escape. I knew this was just the beginning, not the end. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside, there was only one sentence, written in a dark, flowing script. "You are now part of the route." I felt the world close in around me. The shadows were getting longer, the sky darker. The town that I had thought was gone was never gone at all. It was waiting for me, always. And as I stood there with the weight of the red envelope in my hand, I understood the truth. There was no escape. Not for me. Not for anyone. The route had claimed me.